Hello everyone, welcome back. So for our last video, most likely of July, I'm doing a special video here as I am going to be doing a 2024 way too early mock draft and player ranking. And we'll go to all of that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Talking Show. Now, with this most likely being my last video of July, barring any huge news that happens over the next 2 days, this will most likely be my last video of July, so I decided to do a way too early 2024 mock draft and player ranking. Now, it was just over a month ago, it was a month and a day ago, that we just finished up with the 2023 NHL Draft. So, once again, we saw Bedard go first overall, we saw a lot of great players being taken, and there was a lot of good talent that went into the 2023 draft. So I decided to look ahead and see what could be some top-end talent for next year's 2024 draft. So basically, I'm first going to do my 2024 mock draft. Basically, I've projected my very own bottom 10 teams for next year. Like I said, this is going to be extremely difficult to predict. So once again, take it with a grain of salt. I'm probably not going to get half of these right. And before I get my actual regular season predictions in late September, early October, when I do it just like I did last year, this will probably change as well. So once again, take it with a grain of salt. This is just the way I see it. As the offseason has progressed, this is the way I see the bottom 10 for next year in the NHL. But once again, just take it with a grain of salt. So once again, for the mock draft and player rankings, I've looked at some other people's mock drafts, sort of gotten a feel for what other people are looking at for the 2024 draft and given my own opinion of it as well. So once again, for the mock draft, I will be using my own bottom 10 predictions for next year, as well as giving the players who I think will go where if those bottom 10 teams were to be finishing bottom 10 next year. And then after that, I'll be giving you my player rankings as who I think will be the top 10 players as of right now. So once again, player rankings are the top 10 prospects I have for the upcoming draft. The mock draft is who I think those teams will take, given those positions that I have them currently finishing in. So without further ado, here's my way too early 2024 mock draft and my way too early 2024 player ranking. So first off, we have the Philadelphia Flyers I have finishing dead last in the NHL this upcoming season. I think they're probably going to be the worst team in the East this year, and I also think they're probably going to be one of the worst teams in the league, and I do have them finishing last. I don't think that would be too much of a surprise to anyone, and I have them taking from the USHL Macklin Celebrini. Now, Celebrini is a fantastic talent. Celebrini is another guy from British Columbia, just like top-end talent this year, Connor Bedard. He's 5'11", 181 pounds. He's a really good player. He's looks to develop into a top-line center for our team. So just like some of the guys who were taken in the first round this year, some of these top 4 guys. Like, if you look at this past draft, Bedard, Fantilli, Will Smith, Leo Carlson, all of them look to potentially be top-line centers in the NHL, and I think Celebrini continues with that. Celebrini played at USHL last year, put up 46 goals and 86 points in 56 games. He had a fantastic season over in the USHL, and I expect him to only build off of that for this season. He's a player who has great hockey IQ, he has some great poise, he also has a really good shot. He has some fantastic playmaking abilities. His defensive abilities are pretty good too. He's a very well-rounded player, and he looks to be a elite top-line center at the NHL level. So I would think that Celebrini, for the time being, looks to be number 1 overall. From what I got feel from looking at some other mock drafts as well, it looks like a lot of people do feel that Celebrini will be the number 1 pick as of right now. And I think Philadelphia will get a star player here at number 1. And if you look at it, you have Cutter Gauthier, who can play left wing too, but you could have a 1-2 punch long term at the center position of Celebrini and Gauthier. Or if you put Gauthier in the left wing, you could have a first line eventually of Cutter Gauthier, Macklin Celebrini, and Matvei Michkov. That would be a scary line to play against. So once again, I think Celebrini to Philadelphia would be the prime option here at number 1. And number 2 overall, I have the San Jose Sharks finishing. I think if they are to move on from Erik Karlsson, they'll be a bomb-dwelling team again next year. I have them finishing lower than they did this year, just like Philly. And for the San Jose Sharks, I have them taking Cole Yzerman. Not Steve Yzerman, completely different spelling, but Yzerman's another solid player. He's a left winger. He's 5'11", 192 pounds. He's a really good speedy winger. He also played majority of last year in the USHL, putting up 28 goals and 44 points in 32 games. He was another beast in the USHL. Also got into some U18 and U17 games for the National Team Development Program, and he did fantastic. He had more goals than games played in each of those two leagues. So Yzerman looks like a fantastic player, and the consensus I got from all of those mock drafts and stuff that I've seen is that his shot is lethal, and some people even compared him to a guy like Matthews and Ovechkin. So that shot is going to be great, and he's going to be scoring tons of goals at the NHL level. Yzerman is a very good skater. He has some really good hands with the puck. He has some great awareness, and that shot is absolutely lethal. So you put Yzerman on a top line in the future with a guy like Will Smith, that's going to be a deadly duo if the Sharks were able to get Yzerman. So once again, I think Yzerman too. Yzerman also, is the feeling I got, is the only guy who seems likely enough to possibly knock off Celebrini for top spot. Celebrini looks like the number one pick right now, but Yzerman could knock him off and take number 2. So that, for me, I think Yzerman goes 2 to the Sharks. At number 3 overall, I have the Ducks. I don't think that would be too much of a surprise. I have them getting a little bit of a bump from getting last place in the NHL this year, but still, I don't expect the Ducks to do overly well this upcoming season. And with the number 3 overall pick, I have them taking Ivan Demidov. Demidov sort of has the exact same problem that Michkov had. He's a Russian player, so I do think there's a little bit of a possibility that Demidov could drop. But from what I got from around the NHL, some people even do think that he could be a slight bit better than Michkov in next year's draft. Demidov was putting up some fantastic numbers over in the MHL last year, which is the KHL's basically lower league, as he put up 19 goals and 62 points in 41 MHL games. He also got into a couple of KHL games. He looks like a really good forward. So, once again, I would not be shocked if he dropped, but he's not going to drop to 7 like Michkov did. At the very least, Demidov will drop to like 4th or 5th. Demidov looks like a solid NHL player, and just like Michkov will be another top-end Russian coming out of Russia. Demidov has some great skill. He's a very elusive and creative player. He's also a really good playmaker. He has a decent shot as well. He has some really good skills on the offensive side. So, in my opinion, Demidov would be a fantastic winger. And for a Ducks team, they don't really have a ton of elite level wingers. They have some amazing centers with guys like Zigra, Carlson, McTavish. Their defense core for the future looks fantastic with guys like Zellweger, Mintyukov, and Drysdale. So their defense looks good. Their center depth looks good. I think they go after a winger here in Demidov to try and round out that team. So, in my opinion, I have the Ducks taking Demidov. At 4th overall, I had the Chicago Blackhawks finishing here. Like I said, I think they'll be another bottom line team as well again next year. Not overly bad, but still, I think they'll be a bottom-dwelling team next year. And I have the Chicago Blackhawks taking the top defenseman most likely in this draft, Artyom Levshunov. Now, Levshunov seems to have been developing into the top-end defenseman for this upcoming draft. Now, unlike this past draft, as we saw, there was very few defensemen in the top 16. At the very beginning of last year, before the season started last year, when everyone was doing their mock drafts, most people didn't even have a defenseman in their top 16. This was the forward-heavy draft in the 2023 draft and a center-heavy draft, as shown by the fact that the first 4 picks in this draft were centers, and the fact that 6 of the first top 10 picks were also center prospects. So there was a lot of centers. There did end up being 3 defensemen that went into the first round, but last year it was a forward-heavy, center-heavy draft. This year, there's a ton of top-end D talent. So for teams who are looking for some defensive help, if they finish low enough in the standings, they're going to have a lot of potential top pair, top 4 defensemen to pick from this year. But Levshunov looks like the class of the defense this year. He's 6'2", 198 pounds. He's a really good player. Put up 13 goals and 42 points in 62 games over in the USHL this year, in his first year in the USHL, and he did not look out of place at all. I would expect that if he continues to do well, and he has another fantastic season, he will definitely be able to push and continue to be the top-end defensive prospect. I could at some point also see that if he does well enough, Levshunov, I think, could maybe wind up passing Demidov, and maybe get like a top 3 position in this upcoming draft. But Levshunov looks like the top defender. Great mobility. He's a really good skater. He has a fantastic two-way game. He also has some good offensive awareness. He knows when to move up in the play. He also has a really good physical game. He sort of looks like a better and refined Reinbacher. Looks like he, like I said, bigger defenseman, solid player. He's very mobile. He knows when to go in the play. He's very physical defenseman. I think he looks like a very much more improved level of David Reinbacher. And I think for the Hawks, they get a really good player in Levshunov on the right side. They don't have a fantastic amount of defensive prospects, but their best defensive prospect is a guy like Kevin Korchinski. Long term, you have a potential pairing of Levshunov and Korchinski. That will be a fantastic top D pairing. So in my opinion, that's a fantastic move for the Hawks, and I think that would be a really, really good addition for them. Next, we have the Montreal Canadiens, and after all of the players that they took this past year, their depth on the defensive end right now, I have them taking a forward who's a very versatile forward in Berkeley Catan. Now, Catan was playing over in the WHL this year, put up 23 points in 55 games with Spokane in the WHL. He was a really good player. Catan is 5'11", 154 pounds, so he is on the smaller side. He definitely will need to bulk up before he gets to the NHL level, but definitely, Catan looks like he should be a center at the NHL level, but he's also versatile. He can play the wing if necessary, and I think that versatility will be appealing to Montreal. The Canadiens do have a couple of really good forward prospects, like a Joshua Roy, or a Riley Kidney, or an Owen Beck, but I don't think they have the next level potential of a guy like Catan. Catan is a smart two-way forward. He's great in puck battles. Also has some great vision for the game, and is really extremely good in tight spaces. So really good in tight spaces and puck battles. He's a very good player who can definitely help in those tight to work around spaces. So I think Catan with the Canadiens, that would be a fantastic fit in my opinion. And I think Catan, if the Canadiens were to get fifth again next year, would definitely go after a forward, as their defense is pretty stacked right now with guys like Reinbacher, Melieu, Struble, Hudson. And on top of all of those guys, they also have a couple of other guys like Gouli and Xhekaj and Harris and Baron, who all made the NHL last year. So definitely, I think their defense is stacked. I think they go after a forward. I think they take Catan. At 6 overall, I have the St. Louis Blues. I think the St. Louis Blues fall a little bit lower in next year. Just my opinion, like I said, it's probably going to change as well. But for the time being, I see St. Louis being the 6th lowest team in the NHL. And I have them taking defenseman Aaron Kiviharju. Now, for a long time ago, about 2 years ago, there was a lot of talk that this would be the Aaron Kiviharju draft. There was a lot of talk that Kiviharju would be the top-end talent of this year's draft. Now, Kiviharju's sort of fallen off a little bit. He's still a really good defenseman, but he's not the top-level talent that a lot of people are talking about over the past couple of years. And he's also not even really the top defensive talents right now. It's Levshunov, and there's also probably a couple of other guys who could wind up finishing ahead of him. But Kiviharju is still a really good defenseman. He's 5'10", 165 pounds, so once again, a little bit on the smaller side, but he has some really great potential. Had 3 assists in 21 games in the Liga this past year. Also hit 17 points in 15 games in the U18 team for Finland. So Kiviharju looks fantastic. He's a good play driver. He really drives the play on the back end. He's also a really good playmaker. He knows when to make those good passes. He also has some really good poise, and he has a lot of confidence. So he's a fantastic offensive defenseman. In my opinion, Kiviharju could be exactly what the Blues need. We've talked about this past offseason about how the Blues needed some changes on that defensive core. They also don't have too many elite level defensemen right now. And I think Kiviharju could be that guy who they need in that top 4 on the defensive end. So in my opinion, the Blues take Kiviharju. At 7th overall, I currently predict the New York Islanders to finish. Once again, another team who I expect could finish higher, but for the time being, I have him ranked at 7th overall. And I have the Islanders taking Konsta Helenius. Now, Helenius is once again a smaller size forward, 5'10", 168 pounds, but he's a very lethal forward. And after Demidov and Celebrini and Yzerman, him and Catan probably look like the best type of forwards. Helenius is a right winger. He plays over in Liga. He had 3 goals and 11 points in 33 games over in Liga this past year. He had 13 points in 10 U18 games. He looks like a fantastic smaller player who is definitely going to be a really good playmaker. He's a good puck protector. He has some fantastic speed. He has some soft hands, and he's a very patient forward. He definitely waits for those lanes to open, and he makes room. So I think Helenius would definitely fit with the Islanders. Imagine a good, solid, speedy winger like that on an Islanders team that needs scoring. So in my opinion, I think if the Islanders wind up picking 7th overall next year, I see him taking Konsta Helenius. Next, at 8th overall, I have the Winnipeg Jets. And after taking a couple of really good forwards over the past couple of years, I have them taking a defenseman in Sam Dickinson, 8th overall. Now, Dickinson, as well as Kiviharju, are probably going to be the second and third best defenseman in this draft. It's really hard to say which one goes first. I have Kiviharju, but Dickinson could easily go first as well. Dickinson, 6'3", 194 pounds, so he's a bigger defenseman. He plays on the left side. He was playing this year with the London Knights in the OHL. Put up 9 goals and 23 points in 62 games, so he's a fantastic defenseman. And a lot of people think that after getting such a big role last year with the London Knights, he's poised to have a fantastic season this year. And if he continues to have a really good season, this next upcoming season, he's going to be a fantastic player. And he's probably going to go high in this draft, maybe even top 5. Dickinson's a very consistent defender. He has some good D awareness. He also has some good playmaking abilities. He's a good two-way defenseman, so he's good at the defensive end. He's also a really great playmaker. He's a very good two-way defenseman. He's one of the bigger defensemen of the draft, and I think he would be a fantastic either first or second pair defenseman, in my opinion. So for the Jets team, who don't have a ton of youth on that team, or a ton of really game-breaking level defenseman, I think they could definitely use a guy like Dickinson. So if the Jets wind up finishing 8th overall, I have them taking Dickinson at this point in time. 9th overall, I have the Washington Capitals finishing there. I don't see them having a fantastic year in a tough Metropolitan Division this year, but once again, like I said, that could change. But for now, I have them finishing 9th overall, and I have them taking Henry Muse. Muse is a solid right shot defenseman. He's 6 foot, 174 pounds, so he's once again not a small defenseman by any means, but not a fantastically huge guy. He's been playing with the Ottawa 67s this past year, putting up 12 goals and 31 points in 55 games. He looks like a fantastic offensive defenseman as well. Just like Dickinson, just like Kiviharju, looks like one of the top-end defensemen of this class. He's a very good skater. He has some great hockey sense. He's very good knowing where to be defensively. He is also a very good passer, and his shot from the point is fantastic. And I think behind a guy like John Carlson long term, he would be a fantastic second pair defenseman. I think maybe eventually a first pair defenseman once Carlson either retires or goes away via free agency once his contract expires or whatever. I think Muse could definitely be eventually a first pair defenseman for the Capitals. And I think, given the fact they don't have an overabundance of elite level game breaking defensemen on that team in their prospect pool, I think that's a player who they could use very much well. So in my opinion, I have Muse going to the Caps. And finally here I have the Detroit Red Wings finishing 10th overall. Once again, they could finish higher. They're going to be in a very, very hard to play in Atlantic Division that I see being a bloodbath. But I have them finishing 10th lowest in the NHL this upcoming season. And I have them taking versatile forward Tanner Howe with their pick. Now Howe's 5'10", 181 pounds. He's definitely a really good versatile forward. He's most likely will be a center, but he can play wing. He was on the Regina Pats this year, which was Connor Bedard's team, and you even saw some action with Connor Bedard on that team. Not too surprising that he had a fantastic season, putting up 36 goals and 85 points in 67 games. But with Bedard going to the Hawks this year, after signing his entry-level contract, he's not going to be on that team this year. So if Howe can continue to produce at that high-level play without having Bedard on that team, I would not be too shocked at all. If Howe continues to produce for the Regina Pats this year, and he does it without Bedard, that a lot of teams will be interested in adding him to their lineup. So, in my opinion, Howe would be a fantastic addition to Detroit. Once again, like I said, he's versatile. He's a very hard to play against forward. He's good in puck battles. His shot is very good. He's a very accurate shot. And he's also a very elite level playmaker, and he did fantastic with Bedard last year. So, in my opinion, he's a very, very elite level forward. Probably not as good as guys like Celebrini or Yzerman or Demidov, but he's definitely going to be one of the top-end forwards, in my opinion, in this year's draft. And with the Red Wings already having a fantastic center group with guys like Danielson, Larkin, and Casper, and with them already having a fantastic D-core with having some young guys like Edvinsson and Sandin Pellikka coming up a system over the next couple of years, joining a guy like Moritz Seider, I think they could use a guy who's can definitely be a winger at the NHL level, and I think Howe could be that guy. So in my opinion, that's my top 10 mock draft. I have Celebrini going 1 to Philly. I have Yzerman going 2 to San Jose. I have the Ducks at 3 taking Demidov. At 4, I have the Hawks taking Levshunov. At 5, I have the Canadiens taking Catan. At 6, I have the Blues taking Kiviharju. At 7, I have the Islanders taking Hellenius. At 8th overall, I have the Jets taking Dickinson. At 9th overall, I have the Caps taking Muse. And at 10th overall, I have the Detroit Red Wings taking Tanner Howe. So, in my opinion, that's just the way I think it's going to go right now. I'll probably do another mock draft earlier into the season, probably sometime October, November, once we get a few games into the season and we start to see how it actually plays out. Probably do a draft player ranking at some point there too. For my player ranking, I think Celebrini's still the top end prospect of this draft class. He looks like a very elite level forward, and I think Yzerman's a close two. If anyone were to bump Celebrini from the number 1 spot this year, it would be Yzerman. At 3, I think I would probably put Levshunov there as the top defenseman, but I could definitely see Demidov also there. I think Demidov, Levshunov, they're both really interchangeable. I would put Levshunov as the 3rd best player in this draft, but I think Demidov could definitely be the 3rd best player in this draft as well. But at this point in time, I have Levshunov 3, Demidov 4. I would also probably have Sam Dickinson 5. He's a really good defender. I think I would have Aaron Kiviharju at 6. Once again, I think those two are really going to be fighting for like the 2nd best defenseman in this draft unless Levshunov really falls off. So I have Dickinson as 5th best prospect in this draft. I have Kiviharju the 6th best prospect in this draft. I have Catan 7th. I think Catan's going to be a fantastic forward, and I think he's going to be a really good forward there. I have Henry Muse 8th. I think he's going to be a fantastic defenseman, and I think he's going to be a really elite level defenseman, just like Dickinson and Kiviharju. At 9th, I have Hellenius. Once again, a smaller size winger. I could see him slip a little bit in the draft, but I think he's going to be a top-end talent in this year. At 10th, I actually have Cole Hudson, which is Lane Hutson's brother. Now, Lane Hutson's a really good smaller defenseman who's a really good speedy player, playing over in college this year as a Montreal Canadiens prospect. Cole sort of has a little bit of the similar features as his brother. Lane Hudson, very speedy offensive playmaker, but he's also a little bit more on the physical side. So I think he could be a little bit more well-rounded. And unlike Lane Hudson, who dropped to round 2, Cole Hudson's probably going to be a top 15 talent. And I have him being ranked 10th overall in this year's draft. I have 11th overall, I have Tanner Howe. I think he's going to be one of the top end forwards of this draft. 12th, I have Park. Park looks like a really good defenseman. He's got a really good offensive mind and a great shot. He's also got some good speed. So once again, another really good defenseman that I see going higher in this draft. At 12th, in my opinion, he's going to be a really good defender. I also have Chernyshov, who's another good Russian. Now, just like Demidov, I could see him dropping a bit, but he has some really good potential. He's a pretty good defensive forward, but he has some great playmaking abilities and is a good shot, so I think he could definitely go high in this draft. At 14th overall, I have Brandon Nygaard, who's another good forward. Good speed, he can definitely create scoring opportunities. He looks like a really well-rounded forward as well. And there's probably a couple of other guys who I could see going top 10. But in my opinion, if there was anyone to crack the top 10, it would be a guy like Tanner Howe, or Perrick, or Chernyshov, or Brandon Nygaard. So in my opinion, that's my top 10 player ranking for this upcoming draft. With a couple of honorable mentions from 11 through 14. Some players who I think could eventually, at some point this year, leapfrog some of these top 10 players and make the top 10. So, in my opinion, that's my mock draft for this upcoming season and my player ranking for this season. Definitely, like I said, probably lots are going to change after the season starts for some of these junior leagues. These players' rankings are most likely going to change. Once the season starts, we'll get a better idea of where the teams are going to be finishing. So once again, way too early to be discussing this, but in my opinion, this is going to be my way too early 2024 mock draft and my way too early 2024 top 10 prospect ranking. So definitely, that's all I'm going to talk about for today. Let me know down in the comments if you agree with any of my picks or disagree with any of my picks. Do you think these are going to be some of the top end players of this upcoming draft in 2024? Still a ways away, probably not going to be until next June at some point. But still, do you think that at this point in time, you agree with most of those prospects? And if those teams do finish where I wind up predicting them to finish, do you see those players being possible options for those teams? Definitely. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. But that's all I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video, and if you really liked it, remember to subscribe down below. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. Definitely check that out. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. And I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.